Welcome back. In this video, we're diving into the most critical part of music production, mixing. Mixing is where we take all of our recorded sounds, samples, and instruments, and we mold them into a unified song. Our goal is to give every element its space, while ensuring that they all work together. Think of mixing like a picture. Not every element should be in focus all the time. Every instrument has its moment to stand out, while others take a back seat. Let's approach this creatively and imagine that we're painting a still life. Each instrument a distinct object on the table, and you can control how close, clear, or distant each one feels. In Ableton Live, we have a wide range of tools, so for now, let's just focus on the essentials. Think of volume as distance. You can heavily blur a sound to make lush pads, or you can try distortion. And panning moves items left and right. These are the core elements of mixing. Mixing can be overwhelming at first, so sometimes it helps to close your eyes and paint with the sound. That's enough of the abstract concepts around mixing. Let's move on to some more practical tips. Firstly, I typically roll off everything below 130 Hz on all tracks except for my kick and sub. This creates space in the low end for the kick and sub to be more powerful without competing with other elements. I set up an EQ8 preset that automatically applies this roll-off every time that I load the EQ. This approach takes advantage of how EQs display frequencies on a logarithmic scale, which matches how we actually hear sounds. As notes get higher, their frequencies double each octave. Middle C, for example, is around 261 Hz, then an octave up is 523. Meanwhile, the lower the note, the smaller the frequencies jump between pitches. C1 is only 32, and moving up just one note to C#1 reaches 34 Hz. This small gap means that low notes sit closer together in frequency, making it easier for them to clash and create a muddy mix if not controlled carefully. This is why rolling off frequencies below 130 Hz on most tracks helps to maintain a clearer low end. Small details can have a big impact. I often use reverb with a short decay and small size, just slightly turned up to give digital sounds more depth and prevent them from sounding lifeless. It adds a sense of space, so even dry sounds feel placed in the mix. Of course, you can skip this step if you want a drier sound, but this subtle reverb can help a sound feel more natural and grounded. I like to visualize stereo width as an inverted triangle. The low end is kept mono, and as the frequencies rise, the stereo width expands. This helps to create a sense of space and separation in the mix while keeping the low end solid and focused. I often will use contrast to grab a listener's attention. For example, having a washed out section followed by a clean one can really focus their ears. Place a sound with reverb on the left and right with a clean sound in the center, or vice versa. This concept of contrast can also apply to volume, panning, and EQ. For instance, you can contrast quieter, more distant sounds with louder, more upfront ones. Or, with EQ, you can play with cutting certain frequencies in one section while boosting them in another, creating a dynamic range that keeps the listener's attention. A good habit to get into is manually controlling the fades in Ableton Live. Turn off the setting that automatically applies fades at the start and end of samples, and alter them for yourself. I struggled for years trying to get punchy drums with clear transients, only to realize that Ableton was fading the beginning and end of every sample every time that it played. Taking control of the fades can lead to a huge difference in the clarity and impact of your sounds. That's it for the basics of mixing. If you're interested in more mixing tips, let me know in the comments. I can create another video diving deeper into this topic in the future. In our next video, we'll be getting deeper into sound design, where you'll learn how to create textures, craft unique sounds, and take your tracks to the next level. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.